My name is Jim Savage. I'm from Winston-Salem, and I was a cadet here from 1959 to 1964. Graduated high school in 62, was battalion commander, or battalion commander as we call it then, in 63, and graduated from junior college in 64. So that's kind of my background from Oak Ridge, and Oak Ridge is, I came here when I was 13, and Oak Ridge kind of changed my life, and it's just a school that I'm real close to, and what I'm doing today with my wife and I operate the museum. We built the museum, which is a separate 501c3, which means that it's separate from the school and it's run independently. We do our own board, we have our own finances and that kind of thing. So it's a separate company basically. So that's kind of where I am, and I spend quite a bit of time over here organizing the museum, collecting the history and that kind of thing.
When was the school founded?
School was actually founded, it started in 1850 and was conceived in 1850, and the first academic class was in 1852. A gentleman by the name of Jesse Benbow, which he has a home right up the road here, a historical home, took up about $649 from about 43 people here in the community to build the first schoolhouse. And he did that, and a gentleman named Allen Lowry donated the land for the school. So the first academic year was 1852. It started out as Oak Ridge Male Institute. By the end of the first academic year, it was Oak Ridge Institute to allow females to come in. And females were here from that point in time until 1929 when it became Oak Ridge Military Institute. So that's kind of how we got started. The Holts, which took over in 1914, are two brothers, John Allen Holt and Martin Hicks Holt. And they were co-principals, and they basically built the school that I know, along with Mr. Tom Whitaker. So they started out, they ruled the school for 39 years. They built Holt Hall, and I can show you that down in the museum later on, in a chapel, which is said to be the most handsome school building in the state of North Carolina. And the Holts died out in 1914, and their building, the schoolhouse, was burnt down, and this building replaced it that we're standing in today. And so that was basically the school as I know it. And Mr. Tom Whitaker took over at that point in time, built some dormitories, a chapel, and the building that we're in today. So Mr. Whitaker was here till 1929 when Colonel E.P. Holt took over. E.P. Holt was the son of John Allen Holt. And he was the president of the school from 1929 to 1952, I believe. And Colonel Holt liked to promote cadets into Major League Baseball. And I've got some history over there of some of the people that he promoted into baseball. And that's very interesting. And anyhow, he passed away in 1962, I believe. I was here as a cadet when he passed away. And at that point in time, well, before that, Colonel Teal Wright was the president when I was here. And he was here, I guess, for about 10 years, and then we kind of lost track after that. Then it became Oak Ridge Academy. And that was during the Vietnam War. The war was so unpopular they took the military out. And then it was changed back to Oak Ridge Military Academy in 1992, I believe it was. And it's been that way ever since. And that would also allow females to come in when we went back to Oak Ridge Academy. So that's kind of a short history of where we are.
That was very good. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I would love to see the museum.
I'll be glad to give you a 25-cent tour.
Let's go.
Okay. Well, this is 1976 during the bicentennial. And, centennial, I'm sorry. We had an honor guard, and we had these uniforms, and we were dressed with the color guard, and I think our drill team in some of the Revolutionary War, Revolutionary period uniforms. So that's what that's all about.
Oh, okay. Wonderful.
Okay.
And this weapon on the wall?
This weapon on the wall is a musket that these people carried during that time. I would not want to fire one of those things unless I had something on the end to hold the barrel up. It's that thing is pretty heavy. But we've got two of those, one here, one there. And the flags here were given to us by the North Carolina State Archives. And of course, one is the North Carolina flag, the other is the secession flag that flew during the Civil War.
Is there anything else in this room that I have missed?
Well, there are a couple of interesting things. I won't bore you to death with it, but my partner and I have gone all over the state collecting information on military schools. And one of them, my favorite, is Davis, which started out down in LaGrange and wound up in Winston-Salem, or Winston at that time. Now, the interesting thing about that, if you look at this picture here, and there's a big one over here, it was the location was eventually the North Carolina Children's Home. Now, when it was the military school, there's a gentleman from New York, his name was Rugger. And he would come down here and he'd go up in a balloon. And he'd take all kind of pictures, and he'd go back to his draft board in New York, and he'd draw this stuff out. It's like an 1890s GPS, except it's all hand-drawn. And this is one of the drawings he had.
Oh, nice.
Lieutenant Ship was the commandant at Winston, and he was one of two North Carolinians killed in the Spanish-American War, and he was one of the first Southerners to attend West Point after the Civil War. So we like that. I'll tell you, we've been all over the state, and everybody's helped us except one. I'll have to tell the story. It's Newbern. So I called a friend of mine down in Newbern. He put me in touch with a librarian, and they sent me a catalog, and the librarian told me, said, they've got a uniform over at Tryon Palace. They won't give it to you, but if you call the lady, she'll probably send you a picture, which she did. Now, I'll tell you all of that for this. This was a dormitory. It was converted to a restaurant, which is active today. The people down there will not talk to me. They won't answer my emails. They won't answer my voicemails. They won't even talk to the people I send down there to ask questions. But they send me a fresh menu every 2 weeks.
I need to go eat there. They don't know who I am.
Longevity and the time period and so forth. And there's also a map down there with the locations of these schools. Bingham and Oak Ridge are two of the longest standing in the state.
And which one's Oak Ridge?
Oak Ridge is the blue one right here, still going. We're the only one left.
Oh,
Okay. Started out in 1850. This was the first school building that was paid for by the money that Mr. Benbow took up, and the only time the school was ever closed was during the Civil War. And the day it reopened, the schoolhouse burnt down. Now, there's stories of why that burnt down, but we don't believe those. We blame it on the Yankees. That's the only thing we have to blame it on. So we do that. The new building was built. That building stood back here where the water tower is today. And Mr. Benbow, Mr. Saunders, and Mr. Lowry were the first board of trustees. Mr. Lowry gave the land for the school. And the first president was Mr. Davis. And Mr. Davis was president up to about 1975. They all had a chapel. And this was said to be the most handsome school building in the state of North Carolina.
and that's still standing today?
No, it's burnt. That's where we are today.
Okay.
Yes, so it burnt. Right there is the picture of it after the fire. And that was all that was left.
Oh,
And then this building was built after that.
there's not much left there.
No, not too much. The Holtz died out in 1914, and a gentleman by the name of Tom Whitaker took over the school. And he basically built the school as I know it today, which is this building, several dormitories, and a chapel. My father was here in the 20s, and this was the old school building that was converted to a dormitory. It stood right back behind us here. And he used to tell me about how they stayed warm during the wintertime. This was it. And this is why we have such a bad history of fires. Also. But anyhow,
It's a beautiful stove, though.
it is. It's got an 1852 date on it too. So that's kind of how this school got started. And moving on into the Second World War period, this uniform was my wife's uncle's, which is about the nicest thing he had in his estate. So we brought that down here for him to display here. This is a blow up of the monument that's out front, dedicated to those that lost their lives in the Second World War. We had a gentleman here by the name of Marion Gibson, And he was class of 1943. And he graduated from Oak Ridge and went to join the Army in the middle of the Second World War. Army was full. I can't believe that, but he said the Army was full. So he joined the Marine Corps. And about 6 months later, he found himself on this resort island out in the Pacific called Iwo Jima. He was there on D-Day +1, and he brought back this rifle and bayonet for it to be displayed in our museum. This gentleman was Alan Shepard. He was a bugler here. And he joined the Navy, and he was chosen to play taps at FDR's funeral in 1945. There's quite a bit of history in the Second World War. This was during my era, when I was here. This is the first 50-star flag that flew over Oak Ridge. It was given to me at the end of my tenure as battery commander by Major Stu Chandler. I like to tell this story about Ava Gardner. You folks are familiar with Ava Gardner? Well, she had a nephew here, and she was staying with her, I think her sister down here in Summerfield, and she wanted to take her nephew out to dinner. So she called up here, she got permission and everything. She shows up late. The nephew gets nervous, he drives on into Winston. At that point in time, the battalion would form out here in front of the building. We'd march across the street to Benville Hall, where the mess hall was. Well, he took off to Winston. Battalion started moving. She pulls up in front of Benville Hall. No food was consumed that evening, but 200 autographs were signed.
Did he ever get to see his aunt?
I think maybe the next day, maybe. So anyhow. And my good friend that helped me start out with the museum, Bill Northrop, also a roommate. He was an intelligence officer in Israel's IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. And he wrote this book called Spook War, which is kind of a recap of all of his experiences during while he was in Israel. So, this is our Vietnam memorial, so to speak. These two guys were good friends of mine. Jim Tarkington was one of the guys that kind of took us little guys under his wing, kind of looked after us and so forth. He left here, went to the Citadel, ultimately wound up in Vietnam and was killed on a search and destroy mission. And the ironic thing about that is that 2 years later, one of the pallbearers that was in his funeral was on a similar mission. They killed a lot of the enemy that day, and on the bodies of one of those enemies, they found all of his personal artifacts, his lanyard, cigarette lighter, P-38, and all of those kind of things. And Jay Cunningham, also a good friend of mine, was part of the Cunningham Brick family down in Lexington. This is one of my mentors when I was here, Otis Collins. He was one of the first advisors into Vietnam. And when I was here, we had a full military staff here, with 5 military people. And he was one of the TAC officers. He went to Vietnam. We thought so much of him that we made his son our mascot for the drill team, which is right here, the Gold Star Platoon. His brother made the uniform for him. And this is yours truly back in the day, and you can tell nothing changed with the glasses.
Yep, no glasses.
That's right. And we come on in here. This is our Sports Hall of Fame, and as I told you earlier, E.P. Holt liked to promote a lot of the cadets into Major League Baseball. One was Wes Farrell, which was down here. He went to Cleveland. Another one was Ray Hayworth. He went to Detroit and was a catcher. They got a picture of him tagging out Babe Ruth. Billy Joe Davidson was here in the 50s. He went with Cleveland, was with the first $100,000 contract signed with Cleveland. But he got to Cleveland, threw his arm out, and never pitched a game. And of course, Dale Earnhardt Jr. And this is Dale Jr. and Kelly when they were here. Excuse me. And this is the way life was when I was here. We had an SOP, a standard operating procedure, which told us how to fold our underwear, roll our socks, and all that kind of stuff.
Sounds familiar.
And make our beds up. And the only time this room is different is when you're either sleeping or you're at the desk studying. And that's it. Any questions, or I haven't bored you to death?
Can you tell us about the weapons on the wall?
These are actually training weapons. I usually put out the weapons that we train with here at Oak Ridge, our M1s, O3s, and things like that, but I didn't this week for some reason. And but anyhow, those are just training weapons. That's an old dummy model of a M16. the female drill team in 1996 won the national championship. So we're real proud of that. And my wife designed our flag, and she's real proud of the artwork here. And my neighbor sculpted the finial for the flag.
Oh, neat.
So,
And I do have questions about the artillery piece that we walked all the way around and didn't talk about.
okay. My wife hates that thing. Why, I don't know, but I'll tell you a little bit about it.
Maybe because it's big and heavy and hard to move.
Yeah, there are actually two of these. This, when I was here, this was nothing but a pile of scrap back here beside what we call the steam press. It actually, if you look right here, there were two of these, and they stood on each side of the pathway out here.
Okay.
And these were restored and donated to us by two of our alumni.
Was this an actual artillery piece or was this
Yes.
a signal cannon?
No, this is actually, they call it a marine artillery piece.
Okay. Marine
Yeah.
artillery piece. I'll try
I
to.
hate to, I'd love to think, but then, yeah, it was totally restored. We were real tickled with it. We've got another one coming.
Can you open one of the boxes? I'm assuming those were ammo boxes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That is beautiful work. Whoever restored
They
this.
did a great job. And my wife does all of the arranging in here. She doesn't allow me to touch
That's why she
anything.
hates this.
Huh?
That's why she hates it,
Yeah.
because she'd have to move.
That's what, she does all the arranging. She doesn't allow me to touch anything, but I did. It looked like a barrack, so.
Thank you, sir.